Welcome back inside the Section 925 Mobile Pod Center. We're coming to you from the top of the J.P. Morgan building here in San Francisco in front of a live audience. Yeah! With a couple of special guests. Steve Dunn was number three?
Number three.
Number three in 1982 on the University of California Golden Bears football team, and was serendipitously involved in the play unexpectedly, and we're here tonight to talk about his experience on the play and to talk about a new film that's out, the movie, The Play. And joining us is the filmmaker, Peter Vogt. Peter, welcome inside the Pod Center.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate you coming down, and I've seen the film. I love it. I've seen it a couple times now, and I loved your perspective. And people, I know, we'll get this out of the way a couple times probably. I know tomorrow night's show in Palo Alto is sold out, but there are two more shows in Berkeley at the Shattuck on the 11th and 12th. Where can people get their tickets to go see the film?
The best place to get your ticket is on the website for the film, theplaymovie.com. There's a link there on the See It, under the menu there, See It, go to the link, you can buy tickets there. You can also buy tickets at the ticket window the day of. So,
okay.
But the best place to do it is online.
And you're going to be at all of these showings?
I will be at all of them.
And is there any sort of presentation, or are you just going to be available for people to shake hands and talk, or what?
Yeah, I think there'll be a Q&A after each of the showings, and not much of an introduction, but we'll let the movie speak for itself, and then see what people want to talk about afterwards.
Okay, I'm not going to let the movie speak for itself.
If there's a Downey book, I'll try to break it up,
Okay.
because there'll be some mixed showings here.
Well, that's why you got to do it in Berkeley and in Palo Alto,
Exactly.
not in San Francisco, where you might have a mixed crowd.
Yeah.
A fight could break out, certainly. There's still a lot of passion around the play.
There is a lot of passion around the play.
And is that why you did the film?
I think it really is, yeah. I mean, it was, I've explained it a number of times as being a cocktail conversation that I really got carried away with. But, I was remembering just today, we were down at the ferry terminal, and I was getting a cup of coffee at the Blue Bottle coffee shop, great coffee. And this was after I'd done like 3 days of shooting, the first 3 days of shooting. And there was this couple in front of me, and they were having such a great time. And I was like, oh, you guys are having a good time. The guy goes, yeah, where are you from? I'm going, oh, I'm from Seattle. And he goes, oh, Seattle, great town. What are you doing down here? And I'm like, well, I'm sort of starting to make this film about the play. I don't know if you know anything. He's like, the play? He's like, Richard Rogers was my neighbor. I grew up right next to, and like everywhere I went, like, it was 1 degree of separation from the play, no matter what. Somebody was there, or the kids played on the team, or,
I've been coaching youth football with Steve for 8 years, 9 years, and I didn't find out he was on the field for the play until last week.
Oh, really?
So that's my 1 degree.
Yeah, no, I want to hear his story because I know there's something about his story that I know is going to segue into a story that I didn't put into the film, but I found fascinating and could be totally apocryphal and a lie. It came to me from the Stanford side, so I'm kind of interested. Yeah. So I'm interested to hear what your story is.
So why don't we jump right into it, Steve? So you had, were you a senior in '82?
I was a junior.
You were a junior, and so you had already been through a couple of big games, and you had never lost to Stanford.
That's correct.
Going into the '82 big game. So for those of you who don't remember what had led up to the play, Cal was ahead, and John Elway was a senior at that time, and John Elway had never beat Cal in the big game. And Elway gets the ball with a little over a minute left.
Don't ruin the film.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of the reasons why I did the film, because nobody knows about that. I mean, everybody sees the famous 4 seconds.
Yeah. Oh,
and I really.
Elway?
Yeah.
That was part of it.
Very few people know about that. Which would have been, the story, the myth of the. And would have been a great sports story forever.
Well, it would have been the start of because Elway's later career in the NFL, he was the come from behind guy, right? And that's what this story would have been. It probably was the start of that legend, right? Yeah. Just before Steve tells his story, let me tell you my story.
Yeah.
Because people here in the audience, I'd be curious how many of you remember where you were. Those of you who are old enough, remember where you were when the play happened. The reason I remember where I was just coming out of the little big game, which was the St. Mary's College Stanford tilt in Moraga. Neither team has a football They both got rid of football programs. But I just came out of the game. There's post-game tailgates in Moraga, and someone says, "Hey, Cal won the big game," and someone else said, "No, Stanford came down and 4 seconds left, kicked a field goal to win the game," and it's with, "No, Cal ran back the next kickoff, and they won the game." And everybody's like, "What?" And no one really knew. This is all word of mouth, right? No ESPN, no
Right,
internet,
yeah.
and that's really
So
part
great.
of the story is the technology changes, right? If this happened today, when Miami Duke happened, you must have been thinking about the play, right? But you saw it on YouTube, or you could see it whenever you wanted. Then we didn't get home by 6, so we had to wait till the 10 o'clock news that night to figure out who won and what happened. There was no other way of knowing it, so that's how the change in technology has happened. That's my recollection of it. So Steve, how did you end up on the field for the play?
Well, we had called for the hands team, and usually that's receivers and kind of your specialty people. I was a defensive back, and I was regularly on special teams. That's predominantly where I played. I played safety other than that, but I was really second or third string up to that point. So there were 9 guys on the field on our team, and Coach Cap started yelling names, and I felt real comfortable because I was such a special teams player. Threw my helmet on, didn't even get my chin strap on, and ran on the field. And I'd probably taken about 6 or 7 steps onto the field when it was kicked. So I was barely into it, and I just happened to kind of run right into the fray of the play.
You didn't even know what you were getting into, obviously.
No.
And what was there a play? Was there a play called? Was there any sort of? Richard Rodgers called something, but you weren't in.
Right. So I wasn't on the field. That he basically gathered everyone up, and then basically encouraged everyone, just don't give up, don't go down with the ball, keep on giving it up. So that was kind of the encouragement. Just that was it.
Did you hear that?
I did not hear it because I was on the sideline at the time. So I just happened to be, kind of run right into where Kevin then turned to throw the first lateral.
And you were the 10th person on the field coming on late.
That's correct.
Not the 11th.
That's correct.
Because there was no 11th player.
Well, no, I
Was
think,
there?
yes, there was.
Somebody else
11.
come out
Scott
after?
Smith was the 11th.
Okay.
He was not really involved at all. I mean,
He really wasn't.
Yeah.
No, I just, happened to step right into the right spot.
So you come onto the field, the ball's kicked, and Kevin Moan, the first lateral is the one backward overhand, and Kevin was a high school quarterback, and he said, it came to me, and that was my instinct. So he threw it backwards, almost to you.
Correct, and I thought it was to me. So, thank goodness I didn't touch it, I would have screwed it all up. But I kind of took a couple steps back to catch it, and then I felt the presence of Richard Rodgers. And so then I went forward and laid a block, which was pretty easy because the Stanford guy went soft. And so I took him out of bounds, and then the play continued.
Okay, so and as we're going to watch the play obviously several times in the film. You come back on the field though. You were out of bounds, and you come back on the field. What happened next?
So the play was going away from me toward the Stanford sideline, and I ran across as the play was developing back the other direction. So I was downfield a little bit from the lateraling until I was about halfway across the field when Kevin was about on the 10-yard line and then going in. So I got to see the whole thing, and then being the last play of the year, I said, well, what the heck. So I kind of looked for the biggest guy in red and white, and hit one more guy as I that he didn't expect. So that was kind of fun for me.
And how did his sousaphone fare?
Well, I was on top, but
So at what point do you recognize that? Oh my God, the band's on the field. I mean, did you see it?
The band being on the field, I kind of felt the presence of it, but it didn't really hit me that the band was so deep onto the field. And then when I got up, and Kevin had crossed the goal line, then it was kind of bedlam because the fans were running on, the band was running off the field, there's all the flags had been thrown. And I just happened to be standing right at the right spot where all the referees got together, which was really special for me in the sense that I got to see him go around from referee to referee. Did you blow the whistle? Did you throw a flag? And if you did, what was the flag for? And then it went around, and right at the end, he says, okay, well, no one blew the whistle to stop the play. The flag was on the band for coming on the field. That's a touchdown. And I just happened to be right there, so I threw up my hands. I think I was the first one with my hands up. So it was a pretty exciting moment.
So I want to talk to you about the aftermath of the play and what happened in the locker room and everything else. When you were talking to the other guys involved in the play, what was your takeaway from their feelings? How it's impacted them afterward? What was the aftermath from them?
I think the immediate aftermath was pretty terrible for all of them. You know, I really do feel like they felt that a game was torn away from them. You know, everybody wanted to win for John Elway. They wanted to have their winning season. They wanted to go to a bowl game. There was a lot on the line in that game, and none of it came to pass for them. So yeah, there was some depression, and there was a lot of anger. Apparently, there were, you know, by John Elway's statement, you know, that there was doors that were being ripped off in the locker room, and a lot of headbanging, and Coach Wiggins threw a tirade in the referees' locker room that is memorable by everyone who was in that room, by the people I talked to for sure, and the people who overheard it. You know, it was quite a masculine performance for sure.
So you got John Elway to be involved in the film.
I did.
And I think that's a feat. You tell me how much of a feat.
That
it
was a
is.
feat.
Okay. What I would intuit is that everybody always said Elway never got over this. Elway never got over not making the Peach Bowl. Never got over never winning a big game. I always, you know what? A couple of Super Bowl rings sort of soothe you. I got to imagine.
Yeah.
Was it a feat because he's just hard to get a hold of, or was it a feat because you didn't want to talk about it?
Well, he's a hard guy to get a hold of. You know, I mean, I think his friends protect him pretty well because they like being his friend and they don't want to sell him out. And he's a busy guy, you know, so he's hard to get a hold of.
Right.
In terms of talking about the play, he agreed immediately to talk about it, but then finding time to actually do it was a chore. So we did it. He told me he would give me 10 minutes, and then when we started talking, he was kind of having fun. So he did about a half-an-hour interview, and I went back, as soon as I did the interview, I had asked him before, just as we were starting, I said, famously, you never talk about the play. So I'm glad that you agreed to this. And he sort of said under his breath, and I didn't know if we had captured it, and he goes, seems like I'm talking about it all the goddamn time. It's like that, but he said it as an aside. I'm going, oh, did we get that? You know, because it was such a funny way to put it. And then he was, you know, the amazing, charismatic person he was. He is from then on. You know, he gave a great interview. And he's funny. And he gives people a lot of credit. And he's a very generous person. He really is. You know, but he sure likes to win, and he didn't like losing.
Yeah, well, someone commented that Elway was a guy that if it's ping pong, he's going to beat you. If it's a diving contest, he's going to beat you. That's the kind of guy he was. So it must have been rough for a kid. He was just a kid at the time, right? 21, 22 years old probably. Yeah. Paul Wiggin, too, I thought was interesting. It's a guy still wearing it high and tight in the film.
I know,
he looks great.
Yeah.
But he really talked about what a devastating experience it was. Was it difficult to get him on camera?
You know, I called him, and he had no idea who I was or what I was after or why I was after such a thing. But, you know, I tell you, when I sat down, he gave the most honest. You know, I mean, it's still painful for him.
You can see it.
You can see it, but he was super honest about that, you know. And I was really impressed by that. He's quite a man, you know. I mean, I don't know him except from that interview, but you just get the sense that, you know, there's something special about him. So.
Yeah, I mean, he makes the comment that he's riding with his wife on the bus on the way home and says to her, I mean, this is, to have this sort of perspective immediately on the drive home, that this is beyond, tells his wife, this is beyond a magnitude, beyond anything you could ever imagine what just happened here. And he was right. It stood the test of time. What was your, going into this, what gave you, other than this, you talked about the coffee shop, the coffee at the Ferry Building, and everybody's got this connection, but why the play? What drew you to it?
You know, I think that it's iconic in the American sports culture, our memories for sure, and I just love that there was a marching band involved, and I love that it had personalities like Joe Cap and John Elway and Paul Wiggin and, you know, everyone else, you know, Gary Terrell. I mean, it had personality. It had sort of a charisma that other great plays may or may not have, but this one definitely has it. And so that's why it gets remembered, and it was a great rivalry. It happened in an important game. I mean, it amounted to something that had not, the whole story hadn't been told either, you know, so.
It hadn't been told, and my first reaction when I watched it the first time, and I looked for it more the second time I saw it, was your perspective was much more Stanford oriented than I expected. I sort of expected it to be a celebration, and I thought what you did brilliantly was the buildup was sort of this is what the rivalry's about, this is a Stanford fan, and the Stanford perspective, until the play, and then it sort of switches into more of a Cal perspective. Now Joe Cap sprinkled in there, and we'll talk about him in a second. But was that your intent to in terms of the flow?
You know, I think that there's more of a story from the loser side, always. You know, it's tragedy is always more interesting than, you know, when you win, you don't have anything to, you know, you don't have anything to prove afterwards. But if you lose, and you lose in a fashion like that, there's, you know, you have a lot of sour grapes, you have a lot of stories, you have a lot of excuses and alibis and what ifs, and, you know, the refs sucked, and, you know, you have a lot of other storylines that, you know, the winners don't have to pursue because they won.
Did anybody refuse to talk to you?
Yeah, you know, the Stanford athletic director at the time, I can't remember his name. That was kind of a funny story because I really had him broken down. He lives in Port Angeles, but I live in Seattle. Port Angeles is over on the Olympic Peninsula, not too far from where I live. And so I was really after him because I knew that he would have a perspective that I really needed, because he was in the locker room with the referees and Wiggin, and he was in the center of trying to sort this out and getting the NCAA to look at it again to see if it was a legitimate winner or not. And so I called him, and I really played this squeaky wheel. I called him 5 or 6 times, and finally he goes, "Okay, I'll do it. God damn it." Sorry.
That's okay.
But he said, but I think those were exact words. So
This is live.
And so the day of the interview, I said, "Okay, this is where we're going to meet downtown. You meet me here." And I just heard this like, "No, no, 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 no. You almost had me, but I can't do it." He had like agreed to do it, and he just said, I can't remember the guy's name, but
Because you didn't
at the
like-
last minute he just backed out. He said, "I can't do it. I'm still too bitter about it."
Really?
Yeah, so he didn't do it.
Wow. Anybody I'm sure that everybody at Cal was very cooperative.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
I also thought, and I don't want to go too into this, because for the people who were here, and I didn't know about the prank, the post-game prank.
Andy something. Andy, do you remember his name? Okay, sorry.
The post-game prank,
Yeah, that's funny.
which I don't want to get too much into here, although Steve, I did.
You've
talk
heard the
to-
whole film now, you don't have to see
It's
it.
it's still worthwhile, but the post-game prank, which I didn't know
Yeah.
about until I saw the film. And I thought your interview with the assistant editor of the Stanford paper was brilliant. I love when he makes that comment about, and they never really got us back.
Yeah.
Well, they won. That was perfect. I thought you did a brilliant job there too. So Steve, going back to you, plays over, referee signals touchdown. What's next?
Well, it was bedlam on the field because all of the fans came on the field. And it's tradition, you go right to the axe. You got to get the axe, and you got to run the axe around. Well, the axe is a lot heavier than people think. It's probably 60 or 70 pounds.
Wow.
So, to hold the axe one person over their head for a long period of time running, it doesn't last too long. So it passes a lot, but trying to run with that amount of people on the field, and obviously so excited, really, you couldn't even absorb the impact of that day at that point in time. But I think we ran around for probably 15 or 20 minutes. And it was interesting because we ran to the tunnel, and the tunnel's so much tradition and history for Cal. The tunnel just means everything. I got goosebumps just thinking about it. So we ran to the tunnel, and there was Gail Gilbert and Don James, really good friends of mine. And we all looked at each other and go, "Why are we going back in?" So we ran back out. And then we went back up into the locker room, and that was interesting because we're all celebrating. And then that's when Coach Wiggin and the athletic director and all the referees came through the locker room. So for some reason, they had to go through there to get to the decision, or the attempt at a change. And so we were all, laughing, and we weren't really yelling or heckling, but it was a little bit of, it was testy, put it that way. And they, just as you were saying, Peter, they were so bitter. And that's what made it so much more sweet for us.
So I'm going to stop you there because I don't want to get more here, but I'm going to go back to Peter. How much video, this game was not on television. It was not broadcast on television. And the Joe Starkey call is the radio call that's been matched up to the video. In the film, there is, what reminded me is when you said Paul Wiggin, those guys were bitter. There's some video I'd never seen before of Elway and Wiggin walking off the field, sort of in the bedlam. What was available to you in terms of video?
I got to tell you, that piece of footage, and there was one other piece of footage that I found in the same place that I found that, of the California cheerleading team or whatever, when they grabbed the axe.
Yeah.
From the Stanford people who were just like, and then walked onto the field, and then everyone surrounded them, and that was the beginning of the celebration. I can't tell you where I found that, but I don't think, that it doesn't exist in any legitimate realm that I could find it. So that's all I can say about that.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but I looked hard, and of course, I turned over every stone trying to find whatever archival footage I could get a hold of, and that was in none of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, because it wasn't on television, there probably isn't a lot of extra footage, right?
The game was on TV.
It was?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
I
was
don't
on.
recall there was either, but
Yeah, it was on TV.
Because I've never heard the TV call of the play. You hear Joe Starkey's call of it, and that's the radio call. But
Yeah.
I've never heard the TV call, and that's part of why I thought it was.
It never gets played because the guy really blew it.
Did he?
He did blow it, yeah, and he admits that he blew it. So nobody plays it because it's sort of like, oh, wait a second, there's guys walking. This is not right. It was just like kind of like he wasn't with the action. He was just like, oh, this is gonna blow up and be nothing,
Interesting.
Instead of like Joe Starkey, which he took the position, just instinctively, this is gonna be everything, and nobody's ever gonna forget this. And he
Yeah.
just, because he's great. Joe Starkey's great.
Well, and in that way, having Joe Starkey be a sort of a homer helps, right? I mean, that comes across. I mean, the guy at the end when he's doing the whole heart-rending, the greatest finish, and whoever the guy in the background was laughing and screaming, and you could tell out of breath. I mean, the complete homers, and that probably is really what made it in the end.
Yeah.
They were not. This guy sounds like somebody who was. Do you remember the name of the guy? It's out there somewhere. This recording must be out there.
Yeah, I don't remember it, but
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
That's probably what made it, was that Joe had been with the team and knew everybody had been doing it he's still doing it, right?
Yeah.
He's still doing it.
Yeah.
And he's obviously in the film as well, and is tickled about his role in history, right?
Oh yeah, no, he loves it for sure.
Yeah. So Steve, did you see Wiggin and the referees come back out of the locker room?
no, we just saw them combine when they were going in. I'm sure they went out a different door.
They did go out a different
Yeah,
door.
yeah.
They left really fast.
But it was interesting that they had to parade through our locker room.
Yeah, that is kind of weird.
It was different.
So before I ask you about your post-game celebrations when you leave the locker room, I'm going to take a question off the Bianca's Deli and Catering Fresh Text hotline from Josh in the 209, who's a frequent texter on the hotline. He wants to know if you have any AstroTurf or other souvenirs from that day.
I do have a souvenir of the turf, because we've changed the Memorial Stadium a couple times now.
Right.
Now, could I say that I didn't get it that day, but I did get it when they changed it out. So I do have that.
Something from the turf.
Memorabilia.
And that's old AstroTurf, not that's the real. You're playing on concrete with a little green.
Basically, it was concrete. It was pretty rough to learn how to play on it.
Did you have? I mean, it's not surprising that you didn't have anything like that. Did you have any sort of perspective immediately, like wow, like Joe Starkey had, obviously, but he's looking down on it. It's much easier to get that perspective. Did you have any, as a 20, 21-year-old kid, any perspective like, wow, this is going to go down in history?
I did. But the one thing I did, it was more of a vindication in my my heart, because I felt that we actually had outplayed them during the game. Now, they had this miraculous comeback, and I grant that, and obviously John Elway's a special player and made it happen. But my heart of hearts, we would have walked off the field saying, we blew it. We should have won that game. We were better than they were. Now, up there, on the other side of this microphone, they're probably contesting that, but that's what, in heart of hearts, we felt like we deserved it. Aha, we got it, you know. So
Is that why there were only eight guys on the field before you were 9 guys on the field before you walked in?
yeah, there were only 9 guys on the field, and I think the 2 that were missing were so gut wrenched that they lost track of where they should have been. And so that was kind of the feeling, and I just happened to be there at the right place at the right time and ran on the field.
So game's over, you dress, where do you go that night?
Well, running around the field that much, we built up quite a thirst. So we went to this place called McNally's just to make sure that we quenched that.
College Avenue.
We had a little bit of fun down there with Gail Gilbert and Don James and a couple people. We
Not the Washington Don James.
not the Washington Don James.
The Don.
Who was still coaching at the time, and that was a big game for Stanford that season. And so then you come back to school on Monday, and you get to pick up a copy of the Daily Cal.
I did. I walked on campus, and wow, that was shocking. So that's your natural thing, is right as you're walking on campus there, you grab a Daily Cal. It was a little thinner than normal, but it had all the right type on it, looked exactly like a Daily Californian, and I read it, and of course you see the headlines that said, hey, Stanford wins. And it took me about 30 seconds. It absolutely had me going. I said, really? No way. Turn this thing around. And it was an amazing thing in the sense that the Daily Californian was always there, and it just happened to be late that day. So they slipped it right in there, and it was just a great hoax. And so my hat's off to that one.
So you talk about that in the film, and there's this discussion about this call to Joe Cap. Is that real? I couldn't tell whether they had made that up and put it in the paper.
It's all made up.
The whole thing. They never
Made
called
up.
Joe and tried to pull this over on him.
Yeah.
They-
The story was, the story of just the prank paper could have taken a whole film. I mean, it was the gang that couldn't shoot straight. It was the funniest story. The guy, Tony Kelly, who was telling me the story, when they finally came to delivering the paper, they're going, well, how are we gonna get all these newspapers at the University of California? And they're like, your brother went to Cal for a semester before he dropped out of school, and you got the Cal sticker on the bumper of, the Ford Fairlane, 1963 Ford Fairlane. He's like, no, I'm not gonna do that, I'm involved with the prank. And he goes, no, we gotta do that. So they put him in the car, but they drove because he didn't want to be any part of it. And I guess he stood there, with his arms crossed the whole time, And when they got there, they handed it out, and they actually took some pictures of co-eds breaking down when they read the newspaper
really?
as it was being handed out, and then somebody recognized it immediately as being a fraud and tried to say, don't read the paper, and they're like, no, come on, let the So somebody was onto it right away, but
Yeah.
then it filtered to the community in the way that they wanted it to, so that it did come off as a pretty great prank.
Well, I think Steve's reaction is pretty consistent with what I've heard other people say. It was just a great prank.
It's a great prank.
Sometimes you got to tip your cap.
Yeah.
That was a nice prank.
Yeah.
Joe Cap, how was it with Chucking with Joe? I mean, he really seems to enjoy reminiscing, and I thought there was sort of a historical. You gave a nice historical perspective of Joe and Paul Wiggin and their careers. People
Yeah.
didn't realize they were both coaching their alma maters.
Yeah.
So how was it talking to Joe?
Joe is an incredible guy. I think his athletic career speaks for itself. And he's a very sharp, very passionate guy. And but he really thinks that the play is the centerpiece of everything that he ever stood for as a coach, as a player, as somebody who's been in love with and involved with football his whole life, So he really stands by the play in a big way.
It comes with his love for Cal. and football really comes across in the film. I think
Oh, yeah.
nice job capturing that.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that the longest yard he doesn't feel is the testament to his football. that was a pretty good testament.
He likes that too.
Yeah. So Steve, what about Joe Cap? I mean, what was your relationship there with Joe, and in terms of the whole thing that came out of the play really was that the bear will not die.
Right, the bear will not quit, the bear will not die. And, you know, a testimony to him, and that was his mantra. We all believed it. We were fighters, and we would practice on Sundays. And you know, we were from obviously a rugby institution in Cal that's so successful. But on Sundays, we just try to get the blood flowing, so we'd go out in sweats, and we played a game called Rabaz, where we would pitch the ball, and overhand, underhand, and it had to be lateral, and it was just a touch game. So you had to be real quick, and you had to have sure hands. So we really were relaxed in that kind of environment. Did that help? I think it did. So that when the play was actually occurring, now there weren't that many of us that actually touched the ball. Obviously, there were only 4. So with that being said, which I'm glad it wasn't 5 because I was screwed up. But it definitely, it wasn't practice in the sense that they went out there and called a play. But it was in the sense of our minds and comfort of doing such a thing.
And John Elway picked up on that, right?
Yeah, you know, I mean, he was generous in his, you know, his understanding of what went on there. You know, he goes, look, obviously it wasn't the first time maybe they had done something like this, but you know, whatever they were doing, they looked like they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
So
It wasn't so much a called play, but certainly he felt like it.
they
was
felt
practice.
comfortable doing what
Yeah.
they were doing.
And then you could see that. So how often does this come up? One thing that's talked about the film for these guys like Gary Terrell and Richard Rodgers, it probably comes up a lot more. How often does it come up? I know you're not bringing it up because I would have known before last week if you were. But how often?
Well, obviously it comes up every year.
Yeah.
And it comes up more than that just because it's such a play that was so important in history of hope and miracles that occur. And so for that, you know, we see it every now and then. Of course, my kids always, oh yeah, you know, there's the play. But
My son, I showed him when I found out you were in it, I showed my son who's 16, and I said, "There's Mr. Dunn right there, number 3." And the first thing he said, right when you ran off, he goes, "He's not even wearing his chin strap." First thing he said, so he noticed it right away. Any takeaways for you, you know, after that? I mean, like you said, it is the hope. It gives you, sports can do that. It can inspire people to greater heights, and it makes anything that's possible. Isn't that the story of the play, really?
I think so. I mean, it's about teammates. You know, it's so much fun to go back, and it would be fun to go back even without the play. But it does bring a bond together of all those that were all on that team that year. Obviously, having Joe there, such an inspiration, and he is such a fighter, such a competitor, and from that perspective, a great leader for them. So yes, I kind of tried to keep low key, you know, for many years because I wasn't supposed to even be on there, and so it really took probably 15, 20 years before I really kind of let loose with it and embraced it. But it sure is exciting and it's fun to get back.
What about you, Peter? At the end of all of this, you wrapped it all up and now you're touring it. Is this going to be available on, after you show it in Berkeley, what's the distribution like? Is it going to be on iTunes, Netflix? Where can people see it if they can't get to the Shattuck?
You know, for the first couple of months, there's going to be video downloads, VOD, from my website, and also DVDs.
And
I was supposed to have the DVDs with me, by the way, but that company screwed up, unfortunately, so I'm without today. I was hoping to have them when I came down.
So they can direct video download from theplaymovie.com.
Correct.
After that, and then after any plans?
They can pre-order DVDs as well if they want to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they can download it, get DVDs, and any other distribution that, like that we talked to the guys that made Don't Quit, the Joe Roth movie, and they finally got some traction with Pac-12 networks. Any hope of something like that?
Well, I hope it, goes to ESPN, and I hope it shows in theaters, and, you know, I hope it does, you know, wins the Academy Award, I don't know. You know,
I hope it does
you
all.
know, yeah, so, you know, at this point, with the, you know, the genie's still in the bottle,
So-
a little bit, you know, you have great hope, so we'll see.
You had some expectations going into the film. I mean, you must have, you sort of knew the story, you want to talk more about it. At the end of it, when the story was all told, you collected all of these stories, what was really your takeaway? What does the play really mean?
Well, you know, I mean, I think it's more than anything, it's a testament to, you know, what I try to do for a living all the time, and that is that the story never really does end, and there are still stories out there that I don't know about that are associated with the play, and it goes on, and you know, something that draws this, that is this magnetic and has affected so many lives, and continues to have a sort of charisma about it. It is still spawning stories, you know, and people still talk about it and fight about it and remember it. And, you know, I just love that. I just love that it doesn't die, that it's never fully resolved. I love that when Stanford has the trophy, they put their score on it. Or when the Cal wins the trophy, they put their score on it, you know. You know, it's irresolved, and I think that that's a healthy thing sometimes. So.
I think so. And with that, guys, I want to thank both of you for coming in and talking about it, because it's been fascinating. And Peter, congratulations.
Thank you.
I think you've done a fantastic job. And congratulations on the sellout at the Aquarius Theater in Palo Alto tomorrow night. And if you are in town and want to see the film in a theater, November 11th and 12th at the Shattuck, 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Come on, Bears, get out there.
That's
Yeah,
right.
for the 11th and the 12th.
11th and the 12th, 7 o'clock, you can meet Peter there, and if you can't catch it there, be sure to download the film at theplaymovie.com. As one more thing?
Yeah, I want to say one more thing.
Sure.
That if you can't make any of the screenings and you were associated with the play, or if you want to say anything about the play, you can go to the website, and it says at the play. You know, there's hashtag at the play. If you put it on Instagram or tweet it, or if you put it on your Facebook, it'll automatically show up on the wall there. So you can start a brush fire, whatever you don't like at whatever college. So I would like to see whatever Donnybrook that we can get going over the next couple weeks as the film filters out.
Well, and the big game's coming up
It's
in
big,
2
big.
weeks, so.
And we need the axe back.
Yeah. It's been a number of years now, right?
Yes, it's been rough.
And so time for the Bears to get their leg, and this will be a tough year to get it back too.
It will.
Stanford is.
But we've got the firepower to do it.
That's what we thought going into the season. Now, if you want to get into what happened in the last 4 games, we'll save that for another podcast. As always, the Section 925 Pod Center is brought to you by our friends at Squeaky Pops, the all-natural frozen treat that's a favorite of adults and kids alike, and our friends at Venture Quality Goods, 3571 Mount Dallas Boulevard in Lafayette. Thanks again, guys, for coming in. It was really a pleasure talking to both of you. Toodaloo, and go out and have a Joe Roth type of day.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.